Entitled parents called me a burden and cut me off after I moved out at 16. Now they demand I support them after they blew up their retirement funds. I'm 29 now, but my life with my parents has been over for a long time, or at least it should have been. I left home at 16 and didn't look back. It wasn't easy, but nothing in that house ever was. Now they're back, demanding my help after they burned through everything, as if the last decade never happened, as if I'd just been sitting around waiting to bail them out. But it's more than that. They actually believe I owe it to them. After everything, they think they still have some kind of hold on me. I grew up in a house where family loyalty was used as a hammer. My dad, George, acted like he was royalty, and my mom, Lydia, was his right-hand enforcer. She made sure I knew my place from day one, and it was clear they saw me as an obstacle to whatever great life they thought they were meant for. Dad was always going on about the life he'd given up, how he was supposed to be someone important. Mom had her own version of that story, a mix of sighs and disappointed glances, especially whenever they didn't like something I did. I was an only child, not by choice but because they didn't want another burden, as they'd put it one night when they thought I couldn't hear. I tried, when you're a kid, you try to believe your parents love you, that if you just work harder or behave better, they'll see you and maybe care a little. But they were a pair, the kind that saw discipline as a form of punishment and responsibility as something they could dump on anyone but themselves. By the time I was 10, I knew better than to expect hugs or bedtime stories. Their lessons were all about how I should be grateful just to be in their presence. By the time I was a teenager, I wanted out. I'd gotten myself a part-time job at a fast food place, stashing away as much as I could. But my parents found out, of course, and didn't miss a beat. They demanded a contribution from my paycheck, as if it were my responsibility to help them with their bills. "You live here, don't you?" Dad said with that cold smirk he always wore. "Your food, your room, your bed, we're just supposed to keep paying for it. Is that it?" I gave them the money because I didn't have a choice, but I knew then that I couldn't stay. I saved what little I could, stayed out of their way, and kept my head down. They'd started renting out my bedroom for extra cash, and said I could either pay rent or sleep in the garage. That was the last straw. I packed what I could into a duffel bag one night and left. I stayed with a friend for a while, picking up extra shifts and eventually landing a spot at a trade school. I worked hard, kept my distance from them, and eventually made a decent life for myself as an electrician. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. For over a decade, I had no contact with them. They never reached out, not for a holiday, not for a birthday, nothing. I think they actually forgot I existed, which was fine by me. But then, out of the blue, my mom called a few months ago. At first, I didn't even recognize the number. I picked up, and there she was, launching into this whole story about how they'd lost everything. Dad's business was gone, their investments, which turned out to be some risky stocks and crypto, had evaporated, and now they had nothing. She said it all in this tone that was almost casual, like she was talking about someone else's life. When I didn't say anything, she jumped straight to it. "We need you to help us out. You're doing well now, aren't you?" I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I just asked, "And what makes you think I owe you anything?" That threw her off. There was this silence, and then she got all huffy, like she was offended I'd even question it. "We're your parents. We took care of you all those years. It's time you repaid us." "Repay them?" I asked her if she remembered kicking me out of my room, demanding my paycheck, making me sleep in the garage. She brushed it off like it was nothing, saying it was tough love and that it made me stronger. I told her I wasn't interested in her version of history, and she started crying. Well, not real crying, those little sniffles she used to do when she wanted sympathy. She went on about how they were struggling, how family takes care of each other, and then when that didn't work, she snapped. Said if I didn't help, they'd end up homeless, and it would be on my conscience. There it was again, like I was some kind of puppet they could guilt into submission. But I'd been through too much for that to work now. I told her no and hung up. Over the next few weeks, I started getting calls from random numbers. Sometimes it was her, sometimes it was Dad, each of them trying different tactics. My favorite was Dad, who called to remind me that they'd sacrificed so much for me, and that if I had any decency at all, I'd do my part. I ignored every one of those calls, blocking numbers as fast as they came. One day, though, I got home from work and found them sitting on my doorstep. bags in hand, like they were ready to move in. I couldn't believe it. I looked at them, and Dad stood up, arms crossed like he was in charge. "It's time to let us in, son," he said, like I'd just been keeping them out for no reason. "We're family. You owe us that much." I just looked at them. My whole body felt frozen. And then Mom started in, all sweetness and fake worry. "We just want to be close to you, honey. You have no idea what we've been through." I didn't respond right away, so she leaned in closer and started talking about how everything I had was because of them. I couldn't listen to another word. I told them, flat out, that they needed to leave or I'd call the police. Dad sneered at me, saying, "You're ungrateful, and you're going to regret this." Then Mom's face twisted and she whispered, "You're dead to us." But I didn't budge. I called the police, and when they arrived, my parents acted like I was the bad guy, throwing a fit right there. As they were escorted away, Dad shouted that I'd die alone, and that one day, I'd see how wrong I was. All I felt was relief. But it didn't end there. A few weeks later, Lydia called me, saying they needed help fixing up their new rental. She wanted me to come over and do some major repairs for free. "If you cared about us, you'd want us to have a safe place to live." I said no. I told her I was busy with work and suggested a few affordable repair companies, then hung up. She called me selfish, saying I had no family loyalty. I ignored her. Not long after that, she called again. This time, she wanted me to list them as my emergency contacts. "We're your parents," she said, as if that was reason enough. "We have a right to know what's going on in your life." I said no, told her I already had reliable people in that role, and hung up again. She tried guilt-tripping me, but I held my ground. They even tried one last tactic, a family reunion dinner. She called to say they wanted a fresh start and invited me to a restaurant to reconnect. Against my better judgment, I went figuring maybe, just maybe, things had changed. But of course, when the bill came, they sat there expecting me to pay, saying it was my duty as their son. I paid for my own meal and walked out, leaving them with the check. Later, I got an angry message saying I'd humiliated them in public. I thought that was it. But then, one day at work, I looked up and saw Mom standing at my desk. She was putting on this act, all concerned and saintly, talking loudly enough that my coworkers could hear. "I'm just worried about you, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. "This isn't you. You need to let go of all this anger." I was so done with it. I told her, right there in front of everyone, that she needed to leave or I'd call security. Her face went red, and she hissed, "You'll regret this one day. Family is forever, whether you like it or not." Then she turned and stormed out. I had to explain to my boss afterward, and thankfully they understood. But it took a while to shake off the anger from that day. I went low contact after that, blocking their numbers and making sure everyone in my life knew not to respond to them if they reached out. They've tried some minor stunts since then, but I've held my boundaries. When people say family is everything, I get it, I really do. But family means something else to me now. Family isn't just the people who raised you, it's the people who are there for you, who care about you without expecting something in return. It's not some unbreakable bond that gives people a free pass to treat you like garbage just because you share DNA. After that final incident at work, I stopped engaging altogether. I didn't need their chaos bleeding into my life, especially not after I'd worked so hard to build something real, something stable. But they tried one last time, through my relatives. My mom must have reached out to every aunt, uncle, and cousin she could think of, telling them how heartless I'd been, how I'd abandoned them in their time of need. My phone started blowing up with messages from people I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Most of them were variations of the same theme. How can you leave your parents like this? And they're still family, no matter what. One cousin, Anna, even texted to tell me that if her parents were in need, she'd give them the shirt off her back. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, but I knew that it would just keep the cycle going. Instead, I wrote a single group message and sent it to everyone who'd reached out. "Thank you for your concern, but there's a lot about my relationship with my parents that you don't know. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just protecting my own peace. Please respect my decision and understand that it's not something I made lightly." Most of them left me alone after that. A few didn't, but I ignored them. I think they realized I wasn't going to budge, and honestly, it felt good to finally stand firm without wavering. I'd spent years doubting myself, wondering if I was wrong, if I was really as selfish and ungrateful as my parents said. But the truth was, walking away from them wasn't about being selfish. It was about survival. Now, years later, I'm in a much better place. I have friends who feel more like family than anyone I grew up with. I'm working a job I actually like, and I've built a life that feels genuinely mine. Sometimes people still tell me, family is forever, as if that's supposed to mean something. But I think family is what you make it. And sometimes you have to walk away from the people who raised you to find the people who will really stand by you. And as for my parents, I don't think about them much anymore.